So anybody who hasn't like listened to or watched our movie reviews before, generally we try to just kind of give our spoiler free general impressions, and then we'll do a more spoiler filled discussion, with a breakdown of the plot. So yeah, just well, here, let me read the official synopsis first. To find out if his reality is physical or a mental construct, Mr. Anderson, aka Neo, will have to choose to follow the White Rabbit once more. If he's learned anything, it's that choice, while an illusion, is still the only way out of or into the Matrix. Neo already knows what he has to do, but what he doesn't yet know is that the Matrix is stronger, more secure, and far more dangerous than ever before. The movie was directed by just one of the Wachowskis, Lana Wachowski. It stars Keanu Reeves as Neo and Thomas Anderson, Carrie-Anne Moss as Tiffany, aka Trinity, Yahya Abdul Mateen II, which is listed as Morpheus and Agent Smith, which I have a question about that. Jonathan Groff as Smith, Jessica Henwick as Bugs, Neil Patrick Harris as the analyst. Or the analyst.
That's a Celebrity Jeopardy.
All right, so yeah, spoiler free. What did you think of this movie?
It was okay, and I don't know. It's kind of hard to put my finger on exactly what didn't feel quite right about it, but it's okay. It's not as good as anything in the first three.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I'll be honest, like, I've been thinking about this movie ever since we watched it, and I'm still kind of processing how I feel about it. I've seen a lot of really negative reviews of this movie online, and I don't quite agree with those because I definitely didn't hate this movie. I neither hate nor love it. Like you, I am definitely somewhere in between. I think there's definitely aspects of the movie that are intriguing, and others that I really was kind of confounded by and didn't really grasp. I will say, and we'll get into it once we start going into spoilers. I think just like with Seinfeld, I think they kind of yada over the best part. There's a certain part that they just kind of mention offhand, and I was kind of like, I think I would have rather known more about that. And so far, I think this movie's doing pretty bad at the box office. So like, I'm dubious if they'll ever make another one. Which,
Well, there was so many things like we went through a dry spell, and there's been a few things coming out, and I feel like maybe the competition at the box office. I mean, they're up against Spider-Man, which is doing really well, and there was something else, isn't there?
I mean, Spider-Man. I think that Sing 2 kids movie is out.
Oh, I
So
don't know.
I mean,
Maybe it was a big.
there are things. I mean, the fact that it was on HBO is always going to cut into its profit margin, sort of.
Yeah, that makes sense.
But even compared to other movies that have been released that way, apparently it's not doing too hot.
Yeah.
I would move your mic over just a little bit so you can talk closer into it. Um, yeah. I mean, let's get into it. Okay, so yeah, spoiler-free impressions. I think we're both kind of
Yeah.
okay on it. Okay
Middle
on
of
it.
the road.
Middle of the road. So yeah, let's get into spoiler territory. So, God, this one's going to be a bit tough to review, I think. So the movie starts off. We're instantly introduced to the character of Bugs, and she actually to even explain where this movie starts. I think I'm going to skip ahead a little bit. So basically, Neo is Keanu Reeves' character, who, of course, and this is something I guess I should have mentioned in the spoiler-free things, is, a lot of people, the original trilogy, a lot of people say they love the first movie, hate the sequels. Me and you both like the trilogy.
Yeah. I thought. Yeah, the whole thing's good.
Yeah, and so we've never been those people. We've always enjoyed the entire trilogy. And the thing of it is, so Neo and Trinity both die at the end of the Matrix Revolutions. in bringing peace between the machines and the humans. And as this movie starts, and we saw this in the trailers, Keanu Reeves appears to be back in the Matrix, but this movie kind of starts off and it's like, well, is he really? And we all kind of know the answer to that. But basically, in this iteration, like, he's a video game designer.
Right.
And they're basically saying that he basically invented our program. Like, the original Matrix trilogy, I guess, was a video game trilogy.
Right. And so that whole storyline and the characters are stuff that he made, and that was essentially his product.
Yeah.
And so when they come into this, they say, okay, he's a video game designer. But, like, also they try to develop that maybe he has mental issues, so you don't know if he has mental issues and thought that it was real, or if he's in the Matrix and, like, something else weird is going on.
Yeah, so that's I guess that's good. That's the way of explaining the mystery, is like, well, maybe this isn't him in the Matrix. Maybe he was crazy.
Maybe he is just like a crazy person.
Yeah, maybe he is legit crazy. And the original trilogy was basically like in his head or whatever.
Right, it's all game and like he's whatever.
Now, the reason I started here instead of the very beginning of the game or movie is because it's a little confusing, because the character of Bugs pops into what you think is the Matrix, but it's actually the video game that he made, kind of.
Right, like a simulation.
Like a simulation, even within the Matrix, basically. And so she appears in it, and she's basically watching the original scene from the original Matrix with Trinity, only because it's like a video game of it, it's a different actress than...
Right, and you get a couple of these... Well, they do it numerous times, but like if you see Trinity in the real world, she'll be a reflection of this other woman that was in the game, or... If you see Neo looks in the mirror, like his reflection is like this old guy who's supposed to look more like the person in the game. It's weird, but you kind of...
I have a question about that when we get to it as well. But yeah, anyway, so Bugs appears in the video game, and she's rewatching basically that scene. And so this also has, the original Matrix had, operators that were people in the real world who could basically talk to and help the people that were in the Matrix as they're on their missions. In this version, like, the operator actually appears in the Matrix. Like, the person in the Matrix can see them visually. They're not actually there, but they can see them.
Right, like the Matrix has been upgraded, and like their ability to infiltrate has been changed. So they can come in through different ways. They don't have to use a telephone anymore. Their operator can basically have an avatar inside there that they can see.
Yeah, they actually tend to use mirrors instead of telephones.
Mirrors, yeah.
So basically, Bugs ends up, as she's in this simulation, like, there's still agents in there, and they kind of get the jump on her.
Right, she gets pulled... Like, she's kind of like sideline watching through a wall or something, and she gets pulled through or something, so now she's in the simulation with Trinity and the agents.
Yeah.
But, like, basically things start going off script. Like, Trinity gets captured instead of escaping by jumping through that tiny window or whatever. So it's playing out, but it's different.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So exactly. It changes it a little bit from what happened in the original movie. Now this, I think I kind of understand this, but I'm not for sure. So basically, I think what we find out is that Neo, in his kind of mental state, subconsciously, like in the video game program, basically created a kind of Morpheus, like, but he's basically a mix between Smith and Morpheus, and I think. Is this what you got? I got the kind of his subconscious created that character to hopefully eventually wake him up.
Right. Well, it sounds like he's been placed in. So if we go and just say, yeah, he's actually in the Matrix. Okay, like you'd probably expect, even though they're kind of playing it both ways.
Right.
So he's in the Matrix as a game programmer, and the Matrix was his game. And like he's actually tried to escape this reality a couple times, and this comes out later. But so he's failed at escaping because of reasons we'll get into. But so he kind of like figures out this way to be a little more subtle and tricky. And the way he does this, he creates this like small program that run alongside the old game, The Matrix. And the idea is that the two components that were most fundamental in forming him as being this kind of like superhero were Morpheus and Agent Smith. And so he kind of meshes them together into this one character, and this character's developing inside the Matrix, the video game.
Right.
And
it's kind of like Inception. There's a Matrix within the Matrix.
There's Matrix within the Matrix, yeah, and like sub-programs and weird stuff. But so his idea is he needs to create another entity that can propel him to a high enough level that he can actually escape, because he has failed at escaping more than once.
Right. Yeah.
So back to Bugs, she's in this simulation, and she ends up fighting for her life from these agents. And this Morpheus Smith character kind of pulls her out, and they do like a little sideline through a couple doors with keys. And
yeah, she ends up in this key shop, which I'm imagining is kind of like a throwback to the key maker. Yeah, in the second movie. Right.
And even though you don't see him, you see so many keys, you just kind of assume that that's what the link is.
Yeah.
But so he pulls her through a couple doors, and they end up in
like a simulation of Neo's original apartment.
Right, Neo's original apartment, and then she's like freaking out, and he's not real. He's just a computer program, but he's guiding her or something. I forget. Like,
well, okay, so she relays this story.
Like she's the link between. Like Morpheus is kind of pulling her in, so she can pull Neo out or something. Like she's like a link between the worlds.
Something like that. And they tell these stories. So she tells a story of before she was woken up out of the Matrix, she was working as a window washer. And this I didn't quite... So I think this must be not in the video game Matrix, but in the real Matrix.
Right.
And she's working as a window washer at the building where Neo works. And she sees a guy that's about to jump off the building, but he actually, like, she for some reason recognizes that it's Neo, but everyone else, like, and maybe she did at the time, views him as like an old bald guy.
Right, which is probably whatever iteration he was on was a different character, like a different look. And so this is one of his attempts to escape the Matrix. Like he steps off and he doesn't fall, and then it gets rebooted.
But somehow she
she got pulled out at some point.
Yeah, I guess we never get that story.
Right.
Apparently,
somebody you don't fully see that, but probably like when she
that must have put the doubt in her mind or whatever.
Right. So somewhere after that, she got red pilled. And got pulled out.
I mean, we just have to assume that because it never goes into detail. Yeah. And then the Morpheus character. Now he's in the video game Matrix. He like takes a shower, and like the steam on the mirror ends up looking, as it drizzles down, looks like the Matrix code. And like he notices that. And so that puts it in his mind that, something's off here.
Yeah, I kind of forgot. Like he must not have realized he was even a program, I guess. Like he was a...
Right. He just was an agent, and then when he noticed that, it like planted that in his mind or whatever.
Right, because then he was free to act differently.
Right.
Like kind of the Agent Smith. Like he was kind of free from the dictates of the system.
Yeah.
And that's when he kind of went rogue and like found the Neo's original apartment and stuff like that. Like he's been doing stuff by himself.
So after that opening, I think we kind of just go back, or we go to Keanu's life, kind of, right?
Yeah, I think so.
And we find out, like we said, he's this video game developer, or at least in his mind he is, and his boss is this is another character that
Doesn't really make a lot of sense.
So basically we can just see by his mannerisms and everything that he's Smith.
Right, he's got some of the same words, and they even like flash cut the old Agent Smith.
Yeah, and they do this a lot during the movie. Is they'll flash to bits of the original trilogy. So like it's not a mystery. We can see that this guy is meant to be Smith.
Right, which why he would come in there, I don't exactly know. And then like, I mean, they could have like brought in the same actor.
Well, there was just a story that broke today that like Hugo Weaving was in talks to do it.
Yeah.
But somehow it just didn't work out.
Yeah. Maybe he didn't want to touch it.
Maybe he read the script and it wasn't good enough. I will say, and we'll get to it, I think the best part of this movie is the part that takes place outside of the Matrix, but we'll get there. So yeah, like Smith is his boss, and they have this whole conversation. Now, this conversation got very meta and very weird because basically they acknowledge that the Matrix is owned by Warner Brothers, like
right,
the games or whatever.
Like apparently, yeah, the game is also Warner Brothers property in the
And they have this meta conversation where they're gonna make a Matrix 4, and like if you don't do it, somebody's gonna do it.
Yeah.
So I mean, people have speculated that this whole thing was like,
real life.
Lana Wachowski kind of like, bashing Warner Brothers in like mirroring real life. But my thing is like, if that's true, I mean, like they approved this movie for release, so like they're allowing that criticism.
Yeah, I mean, well, at the same time, you're still probably going to get better results with the original creators, but yeah, possibly. I mean, it's one of those things. Like, it's a huge property. Someday it's going to be rebooted.
Yeah, even if this movie does poorly, I think many, many years from now, we'll get some sort of continuation of the Matrix.
Yeah, and I'd actually prefer like different storylines, but well, that's another thing that in like the original Matrixes where you had like there have been like 1,000 the ones. So I mean, you could go a lot of different ways with a hero's journey.
Well, and actually, when we get done with this review, I want to pitch you my version for Matrix 4, just for funsies, and see what you think. Because I've been thinking about it.
Fire hose diarrhea.
Yeah, you see where my brain goes.
I just see diarrhea, hard shits, elephant, Jurassic Park.
That's like what the dude who started looking like the Matrix Code. So yeah, like it kind of gives this montage of like, the people that work with Neo, like kind of like pitching ideas for the Matrix, and kind of the whole thing's kind of meant as like some sort of social commentary on like, I think like sequels and reboots and
yeah, they go on about some of that different stuff, and yeah, you can kind of tune it out. You're like, okay, I get it.
I kind of think like with that kind of stuff, either they should have leaned into it more or maybe not at all. It was weird.
I would say not at all.
I would lean towards not at all. But maybe with that, remark they made, like maybe this was like she was pissed off that like they told her that they were going to do a Matrix 4 no matter what. Maybe that is based on real life. I don't really know.
Yeah, I mean, I can definitely see some of that probably seeping in like that, so I wouldn't be surprised.
But basically, we get this whole montage. And maybe before that, I think before that we have Neo. Um, like we find out that like he's had like a suicide attempt, and like he's been going to this therapist that's known as the analyst, um, played by Doogie Howser,
Yeah.
and like right away, like I was wondering if what you thought of this. So he's wearing like these like bright like blue glasses. Is that to represent like the blue pill and that he's like in the
I'd say
Matrix?
that's probably good.
That was my guess, like the blue theme with
Yeah.
him. Um and yeah, he's like his therapist and he prescribes him the pills, which are the blue pills.
Right.
And we get this whole montage
Of him taking blue pills every morning.
yeah, and we can just see like he's depressed, and like they even have this like it ends with him like in the bathtub was like a single tear like goes down his
right,
face, and he
yeah.
just it was kind of like an effective montage, I guess. At some point, and I'm probably mixing up the order of things. He goes to this coffee shop with like his friend from work.
Right. He has like it's like an assistant slash coworker or something, and his name is
Jude, I think.
right. Like it's almost Judas.
Ah, I didn't even think about that.
Right. But
You're right. You're right.
yeah, because he does betray him.
Yeah. And also, like, the original trilogy was filled with religious
References,
references. And, you know, Neo is basically like a Christ-like figure.
Right. Yeah, that's true. Uh, yeah. Yeah, kind of getting the order of things was weird, but okay. So they go to coffee. Him and Jude, they go to coffee, and Trinity shows up.
Right.
And
Although
like,
Tiffany in this...
right, her name's Tiffany. What's his name? Oh, he Anderson. Yeah.
Yeah,
it's
Thomas
Anderson.
Anderson, yeah.
But yeah, she shows up and like he keeps looking at her, and it's kind of weird, and like
He's definitely, like, attracted to her, you know?
yeah, he's attracted to her, and I guess it becomes obvious later why, but like Jude tries to introduce them to each other.
Yeah, because he's like... He obviously likes her, and Jude's like, oh, I'm going to go, you know, talk to her for you.
Yeah. And so at some point, yeah, they shake hands and you can tell they have the magic touch or whatever.
But we also find out that she's married with children.
Right. So that lasts basically just long enough for her husband and kids to come in and be like, time to go, honey.
Yeah.
And pretty much then she leaves. Like, I don't know. It's like kind of awkward. And
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. It was supposed to feel kind of awkward. Now, this part got really weird. So it goes back. He's in his building, a fire alarm or something, or was it?
It was at work.
He was at work, and I don't remember if it's a fire alarm or if they say like a bomb threat was called in or what. But they're like evacuating the building.
Right. Yeah. I think it's just like a fire alarm. And then he gets the phone calls. It's like the same plot point in the first movie.
Yeah,
It's like,
it's a text this time instead of a phone call. But
Right.
yeah, it basically says, you know, go into this bathroom or something.
right.
And so he goes in there and he's greeted by video game Morpheus,
Right.
who offers him a red pill. And he starts like freaking out, right?
Right. Yeah. Like, because has serious doubts about his own mental well-being.
Yeah, so he's like thinking like you're not real, like I'm having a mental break.
Yeah.
And then a guard comes in,
But also
Morpheus.
at some point he stopped taking the blue pills, right? Like, so he thinks he's having accelerated
We do see him like dump him in the sink
in the
or
sink,
whatever.
right? Yeah.
So yeah, I guess he did stop taking them. A guard comes in, Morpheus does like the wall run shooting thing, you know, and then this bit got weird for me. So Neo exits, he's walking away, like guards see him, and like they're about to shoot on. And then there's like a huge explosion. Morpheus ends up getting in a firefight with those guards, and Neo's just trying to like kind of keep his head down. But then Smith walks in and like becomes like Smith again, and like pulls his gun on Neo and starts like shooting at him.
Yeah, and it was kind of weird because it was almost like he had a revelation as well.
Yeah.
Like, I remember this or something, I don't know. And then he just picks up a gun off the ground and starts shooting.
Right. Basically, this whole sequence ends with him waking back up in the analyst's office, and like the analyst is like basically tell him he had an episode, like, did you stop taking your pills or whatever?
Yeah.
But then my question is, what actually happened in that prior scene?
Well, I think like all the fighting and shit was real, but it's just like, I guess Morpheus and Bugs must have got back out, and they just reset the building so it looks normal. So like he's like, if you go back there, what do you see? He's like, nothing, because nothing happened. I don't know.
Here's the other question I had for you about Smith. So the whole thing about, the reason in the Matrix Revolutions that Neo is able to basically make a bargain with the machines is that Smith is so virulent that he takes over the Matrix basically.
Right.
And like, so they cut a deal
to destroy Smith.
They cut a deal with Neo to destroy Smith. So if Smith was that powerful the first time, why in the fuck would they risk putting him in this version of the Matrix?
Yeah, I mean, it doesn't make any sense.
That part of it I don't think makes sense.
Yeah.
And I really, as Smith's character like intervenes in this movie, the whole time I'm just thinking like, I don't understand this character really.
Right. Why is he allowed to exist? And then like,
and why does he do the things he does?
Different, and yeah, it just doesn't. They never have a good explanation of why.
That part is never satisfactorily
There's no rationale for him being there. But yeah, and then like you have somebody else playing Smith, and you don't like him as a character. You're not Smith. I had like an internal revolt. It's like I just didn't like it.
Yeah, just that part it never made sense to me. So now Matrix Neo is really depressed. He's drinking. He's on top of a building, and he's about to jump off because once again, like he's like, I know something's wrong. I think I can fly. He's about to jump off, but that's when Bugs comes in, stops him, and she's like, "Follow me," or basically,
right. She has the white rabbit tattoo.
Yeah, I was gonna mention that. That's another thing that kind of bugged me in this movie is I feel like they were just playing all the hits. Like there's so many references to the original trilogy, and it just, I don't know, it feels forced in a way that I was like, we don't need these.
Yeah, I think there's an element of that, and it takes away, like, you're not bringing anything original to the table. And they talked about nostalgia elements as well. That
also, I'll say one of my big criticisms of the movie is like the original trilogy, like the action in them was very groundbreaking. Right. This not only repeats a lot of the action we saw in those original movies, but it's not shot as well. Like the action in this movie just straight up is not as good as in the original.
A lot of people say that it looks slower and chunky, and I agree.
Yeah.
It's not as crisp.
It's, yeah.
And like you said, they repeat some sequences, so it's like the same choreography in certain places.
The exact same choreography.
Yeah.
Like even to the where like when he fights Smith later on, like the walls breaking in the same way, and it just, I'm like, why did they do this? Like, it's like, why not, in the spirit of the Matrix, like, give us something fresh, try to give us something we've never seen before.
Yeah, I think that might have been part of the disappointment too, because I like in some of those fight scenes, you're not surprised. Like you're just like, okay, this went how it was supposed to go.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think there's definitely an element of that going on.
But anyway, Bugs grabs him, goes through this white door. They end up on this bullet train in like Japan. and there he's kind of and then even from there they go through another doorway that basically takes him to that room in the first one where he meets Morpheus, and they red pill him. And
yeah, she finally red pills him, like Morpheus failed to red pill him the first time.
Right. And there he has a conversation both with Bugs and the new Morpheus. And again, in the background, they're showing the same scenes of Neo in the first movie.
Right. Yeah. Just more needless reference. Like they say, like it's a 2.5 hour movie, and they say like half an hour is just old footage. And I mean, it's not all at once. It's spliced in like 10-second shots,
Right.
but it's done a lot.
It's done a lot, and I don't know if it was needed really.
Yeah. Yeah, it was just there.
It was just there, and I was just like, I don't know, weird choices in this movie. But yeah, they end up red pilling him. At one point, like he sticks his arm through a mirror, kind of like he did on the first one, where it like starts dissolving into it. And at that point, the analyst is on the other side and like tries to pull him back in, and that's where we kind of really get the point that he's like definitely
on the other side.
on the other side, yeah.
You pretty much expected, but
Yeah. So then they end up going back to the bullet train, and at this point, the Matrix does something that they'll do again, which is they have all these like plants within the Matrix that they can basically turn on to swarm the people in it.
right. Apparently, well, it seems like virtually like every person is like a bot inside the Matrix.
I was unsure if every person was or just a lot of people.
A ton of them, right?
Yeah.
Like later on, and there's a scene in the city where it seems like everybody is.
That part made me laugh.
There was some, yeah. It was like it was a little stupid.
Although we'll skip real close to that scene that, like, one of a guy's like in bed with his girlfriend, and he gets turned into one of those, but his girlfriend
she
doesn't.
Yeah.
So that's why I would kind of think that maybe
not everybody.
maybe not everybody, but a lot of people, So yeah, then they have this like kind of action scene, on the train, and again, it's fine, but it's nothing spectacular as far as action goes. Now I can't remember. Do they go straight from there to him waking up in the real world?
I think there's like a small mirror in the bathroom they use to transport out. I think
That's right.
They go out, yeah.
Yeah, there's like this tiny mirror, and like Bugs is like, we can't get through that, and he's like, oh, it's a matter of perspective. Get close to it or something.
Right, it gets bigger as you get closer. And like, what?
A little weird thing.
That's not exactly how perspective works, but all right.
Now I heard that like, I missed the line, but apparently someone says like at some point in the movie, Bugs says, "What's up, Doc?" So like she's kind of based. Her name comes from Bugs Bunny.
I mean, I guess,
which is a Warner Brothers character.
I don't remember that line, but
I have no idea what like the significance of that would be. So maybe something else happens, but he wakes back up right in the real world. A scene that very closely
resembles the
first movie.
Wake up in the jelly or whatever.
Yeah, he wakes up in the jelly, takes like the thing out of his throat. Except in this version, like a robot comes, and at first it's kind of weird because like it like gets on his like back or something and kind of like smushes him into the thing, and I'm like, is this thing trying to drown him or something?
Right.
But then it like picks him up, and we find out that it's basically working for the good guys to carry him out of there. But as he's getting out of there, he notices like the pod like right next to him is housing Trinity.
Right, and so this comes back to not making a ton of sense because it becomes apparent later on that he and Trinity are apparently like tantamount to this version of the Matrix working properly, and yet like neither of them are really guarded at all in this space.
Yeah, we'll get to that later on, but that's another aspect of this movie that I'm still like, I don't really understand. But yeah, anyway, they pull him out, they bring him to their new ship, which I don't remember the name of the ship.
Yeah, I don't
I'm sure it had some sort of significance. And he ends up dressing similar to how they dress in the original movies and everything. I don't remember the exact sequence of events. I know at one point, like, they get him on the gurney and, like, he almost dies.
Yeah, it's so many recycled plot points from the first one. It's like similar difficulties, and
Um, I can't
they
remember.
have a different reason, but
Is that where they put him in with Morpheus in the training program?
right. I think there's some like thing where he's having like the whatever problems, and he gets introduced to the crew briefly, and they're pretty much all forgettable, and they're copies of the first one.
Yeah, you got the operator, you got
you got your tank
woman
and
with
dozer.
funny hair.
Yeah.
Kind of, yeah, like you said, forgettable characters.
But anyway, they're in there, and then at some point, he gets slapped back into a training mode with Morpheus.
Right.
And I guess this is where he's supposed to wake up and start training again. Like, I kind of
Yeah, like he ends up like rediscovering that he knows kung fu, and he beats Morpheus and wakes back up or whatever. And
well, part of this fight is like he's getting his ass kicked pretty much.
Yeah.
And at some point Morpheus is like, he doesn't want to fight even, like he resists fighting.
Yeah.
And at some point Morpheus is just kicking his ass. He's like, if you don't fight, I'm going to kill you, and then, you're never going to see Trinity again or something. So that's like his motivation. He finds his motivation to start fighting back.
Yeah, I couldn't remember their dialogue, but you're right. It was something like that. Yeah, so like Trinity is like kind of his driving force.
Right.
But anyway, they get back out, and then they end up going to, apparently Zion is no more. Now they're, the city they go to is Io.
Io, yeah.
And this was actually ended up being kind of my, I think, favorite part of the movie, and the part that we found out the most interesting stuff, although they kind of glossed over some stuff. So we're introduced to Jada Pinkett Smith's character, Niobe, from the originals. There. She's like, super old now. That's another thing, is like something like 60 years has passed.
Right. So apparently he's aged like 20 years or something, and supposedly like 60 years has passed in the real world.
Right. Like him and Trinity haven't aged as much
as them, yeah.
Apparently due to being in the pods or something.
I don't know.
They're
being kept artificially.
Yeah, they don't really say.
They do mention something about them, like their internal being maintained. Somehow I think the machines are kind of artificially like fixing them.
Yeah. But here we find out a couple of interesting things. So basically, the third movie ended with peace between the machines and the human race.
Right, and we'll get to this. This confuses me a lot.
Well, because they don't go into enough detail. But basically, we find out that peace did last for a certain amount of time.
Right, so this is what's confusing. They made an entire new city because the Sentinels could find the other city. And somehow they've like camouflaged this new city so it's invisible to the Sentinels. But also they have all these like machine creations that come from the machine world working and helping them do different things.
Well, this is my understanding. Is that so they had peace for like, I think quite a few years. And they also mentioned that the original Morpheus became like the leader of the humans, like during that time.
Right, he was like,
and
he was leading.
He thought basically the prophecy was fulfilled and there would be everlasting peace. And so like when things started going wrong, it sounded like he didn't even really accept that or something. I don't think they even ever mentioned though, like if he died, Well, I assume
must
he's
have just
dead.
died,
I
yeah.
assume he's dead, but they didn't really mention how. But basically, what we find out is there was a split within the machines, where like some of the machines were with the humans, but some of them like with their sentience or whatever, like basically started backtracking, and they wanted to basically some of them are against humans, some of them are with humans, and they had some sort of conflict that they briefly like show, but this is the part they don't explain enough. So basically, the machines that have aligned with the humans, you can see in this IO city, and like, so like they have robots that work for alongside of them. They're friends with. They,
Right.
help them.
They even make mention of like somehow like pulling data out of the matrix that is actively used in helping them in their like biology and like growing plants and different stuff.
Yeah, and this is also something we glossed over. Is they now have this thing where like all these like tiny magnetic balls can take programs in the matrix and give them basically a physical form in the real world.
So this is how Morpheus is.
Yeah, so they do that with Morpheus. And then, yeah, like you're saying, like Niobe takes him on a tour of Io, and they can see that they're working. Some of her people are working alongside like a program that's also like magnetic balls,
Yeah.
And yeah, they're able to like grow food they never did. Like they grow strawberries or whatever, and they have all these projects they're working on. But yeah, I here's the thing I wish they would have explained is so apparently there was this schism within the machines, like I said, and some of them wanted to maintain the peace with the humans, and some of them didn't. The ones that didn't recreated the Matrix. But then I'm like, what happened? Did they kill and capture like a certain amount of people to refill the Matrix? Like, it doesn't go into detail.
Well, I mean, I don't think everybody ever came out of the Matrix, but like they were going to allow people to come out. So I mean, I don't think they lost a whole population.
But I thought the end of the third movie.
Well, they
like, because at the very end of the third movie, like the Oracle and the Architect have a conversation, and she's like, "Will you uphold your end of the bargain and free all the minds of the people in the Matrix?" And he basically says yes. Right. So I thought all the minds in the Matrix were freed.
Well, I mean, how many people though are gonna be like, "I'd rather be here. I want to go live in a cave." So
I mean, some, but I feel like they should have mentioned that if that was the case, and they didn't.
I mean, maybe that's kind of my assumption that even though there was peace, people still stayed in the Matrix, like a lot of people.
That could be. Yeah, I kind of wish they that. This is the part where I'm like, oh, that's fascinating, but I wish you would have told me more, so I just had a better understanding of how we got to where we are.
Right, and so also not really talked about is somewhere the Architect is transitioned out to this analyst character. Like, so somehow he was deposed and this new guy came in.
Right.
And also, like, between the changes of the Matrix, certain programs were deleted, like the Oracle and presumably others.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I guess that leaves a lot of questions. That's probably like a whole story by itself. Because apparently the Matrix has been rebooted more than once since then.
Well, and they also mention, the analyst does, that the original Architect, he was very emotionless, and his version of the Matrix was just mathematically based, all about balance and everything. And like he found that by utilizing emotion, he could power or basically make a version of the Matrix that was like more stable and gave off more power.
Right, and like, so he goes into a speech about it later on, but the crux of him getting more power out of this is this relationship between Neo and Trinity.
And this I didn't understand.
Yeah, it doesn't make any fucking sense. But so he found out, like, if he keeps them in the Matrix close, but not too close, because if they get too close, then, with their powers combined, they break the Matrix.
Yeah.
So,
and it appears that they've done that a number of times.
right. Yeah, it sounds like they have broken through, but the analyst has kind of figured out how to keep them close, but not too close.
Right.
Which, yeah,
yeah, that part of it didn't work.
You're not going to really make sense of it. But.
No, that part of it didn't work for me at all. I was just like, this sounds like nonsense. And like the idea that would somehow like generate more power to the robots.
It creates more power on the whole.
It didn't make sense to me.
Yeah. But their love has this huge nuclear power, apparently.
Yeah, I mean, I like the idea of their bond and their love for each other freeing them from the Matrix, like kind of a love conquers all type of thing.
Right, and
I just didn't like that subplot,
Right, I mean, it's tricky to tie all these things together, I'm sure, but yeah, it doesn't fit really well. But it comes back to, I think the problem is like, there is conflict, but at the same time, you're kind of like, between sorting out what's bullshit and like you never really feel like he's in danger, I think.
No.
Yeah,
no.
You never really feel that.
Especially like once we get to the very end action sequence.
Right, which is also okay.
I mean, I don't want to skip too far ahead, but
so we're out in the real world. There's Niobe, which I don't know about you. I hated her. You're just like, she's a.
I didn't hate her, but at the same time, I didn't necessarily, given how I found her to be in the original movies, I didn't know if she necessarily gelled. Although a lot of time has passed, so maybe. The thing I thought was like weird though is so like she has this conversation with Neo, and Neo basically expresses his interest in freeing Trinity from the Matrix.
Yeah.
But apparently Niobe is afraid that is going to just lead to all-out war between the humans and the machines. And so she's like, I'm going to have to imprison you.
Right, which you don't really understand that either.
No, I was like, what?
You're kind of jumping here, right?
Yeah.
But she's like, yeah, well, it's nice that you got out and all, but straight to prison.
Yeah, so she puts him in this quote-unquote prison, which has a balcony to the outside.
Right. And all these ships that can just fly around out there.
And apparently a port where, the Morpheus ball guy can just, ball version of Morpheus can come right in.
Well, didn't he drizzled down a gutter or something?
Something like that.
Yeah.
And he's like, oh, she gave you the Rapunzel suite or whatever.
And then they're like, oh, this wasn't an obstacle at all, and they fly away.
Yeah. And right after that, Niobe is next to her wife or girlfriend or whatever, and she's like, and her wife is like, I bet a part of you is relieved that he escaped or whatever. And I'm like, this was the fastest turnaround ever. It was so pointless to even.
It was pointless.
I'm like, I think they basically, I think could have just had her express her opinion that she really didn't want him to do that or something. But
I mean, I can see building the conflict. They got me to hate that bitch, and I didn't like her. You thought she was okay, but yeah, at the same time, that part of it walked away from it. Almost immediately is like, we didn't need to go to the city. We didn't need to see it. We didn't need whatever the fuck that bullshit was. I mean, it's kind of cool and it's interesting and it's okay, but it really served very little purpose. We got introduced to maybe a couple of machines there that were going to be part of the story.
Yeah, and I also don't know exactly when it was. Well, I think it was somewhere around here. We're introduced to, I believe her character's name was Sati, who is the little Indian girl from Matrix 3.
Right, in the train station.
Yeah, in the train station, is all grown up now. And we found out that her father, who was a program, basically helped design the pod that Neo was in.
Right, that's the story. So he was tasked with designing these pods or whatever, so he was part of that project. And he figured out what was going on, so he taught his daughter, like, or he positioned her or something, so she was going to be like part of this element to help him escape.
I was a little confused by. I don't remember the exact details, but yeah, she's helping formulate the plan to break Trinity out, basically.
And did it seem like she kind of has Oracle powers or vibes? Like, wasn't she? Didn't she get taken to the Oracle or something?
Yeah, so she did have scenes with the Oracle because there was like the whole thing about them baking cookies or whatever.
Right.
So yeah, she met the Oracle when she was little.
Yeah. Well, I thought she was like one of the orphan kids that got took in and trained or something. Maybe I don't know. I don't really remember.
I mean, she had a few scenes with the Oracle, but not too long after that, Smith takes over the Oracle. But then at the end of the movie, like she's with her at the very end of the movie as well.
Right. She gets taken over too. Yeah.
Yeah, and then at the very end of the movie, the Oracle's back to being the Oracle, and she's with the little girl.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's hard to tell exactly. She maybe did learn some stuff from the Oracle. Well, I assume she did.
Right. It vaguely seemed like she had some kind of powers, but like it was. Yeah, it was. I don't know. I'm not sure.
Anyway, so they're formulating this plan to get Trinity out. Now, if they explained it, I totally didn't understand it. So basically, they are going to take bugs and basically her and Ball Morpheus is going to go into Machine City to Trinity's pod, and they open Trinity's pod, and they're going to like take the line that goes into their head, splice it, and put in like bugs. I didn't understand what the point of all that was. I didn't get it.
Right. It really doesn't make sense because don't they also have a team in the city? Like Trinity has to be she has to be red pilled to come out one way or the other. But they're like, are they transferring her consciousness to bugs while they try to wake up the body, and then Trinity goes back in? And it happens very fast, and again, it's just another thing that seemed unnecessary.
Yeah, part of me was like, maybe I should have watched the movie with subtitles because I totally just did not understand why they had to do that.
Right, I think there was an explanation.
I think there was some sort of thing where they thought like Trinity maybe could have died if they didn't do it that way, but I didn't understand it myself upon one viewing.
Right. Well, I don't really remember when they go back in. How do they approach Trinity?
So Neo goes to the coffee shop where the analyst is waiting.
Right.
And
okay, yeah.
he makes this deal with the analyst where, like, if he tells, talks to Trinity,
and she wants to stay in the Matrix, then he'll
he'll
blue pill and go back to normal.
But if she says she wants to leave the Matrix with him, like, the analyst has to honor that.
Right,
and
he has to
go.
let her go and let them go. That's right.
Yeah. So the analyst basically agrees to that. And also the coffee shop is filled with, like, the analysts, like, guys or whatever.
Right. There's a bunch of,
And, we glossed over it, but, like, back in the real world, like, Niobe, like, at first, like, she's really mad at Bugs and, like, fires her as her captain or whatever. But then later on, like, I guess when she agrees to, like, help him or whatever, like, she's looking for volunteers to help Neo go in, and basically all the other captains volunteer.
Right.
Like, my captain.
That's another thing that just was like, oh, you're fired. Oh, you're rehired. Oh, you volunteer? You're not volunteering. I'm forcing you. It's like, okay. It's the opposite of, you can't quit. You're fired.
It's like that J. Jonah Jameson thing where, like, you're fired. You're hired. Yeah, but anyway, yeah. So there's all these other guys that are on their side that also, like, enter the coffee shop as well. So then Neo and Trinity have the conversation, and at first, like, she says no because she loves her kids or whatever.
Right, and the husband and the kids kind of come in, and it's like, she's like, I can't do it.
Right. But then, like, doesn't she, like, she looks back at Keanu and, like the husband's, like, trying to get her to go, but then, like, I think she has a change of mind right there or
Right.
something.
She has like a change of heart. And then like the husband's eyes change, so you're like, oh, he's a bot. And I guess the kids too, maybe. I don't remember.
Yeah, I don't remember exactly. But it seems like the analyst was full of shit, right? Like, he wasn't going to honor this deal.
Right, yeah, no, I don't think so. Which is, I don't know, maybe that's why they had the backup plan with Trinity. Like,
Oh, actually, you know what? I totally forgot a scene. So there was a scene. Neo first goes in, and
he's just gonna extract her.
Right, he goes to this motorcycle shop where she is, and he's basically ambushed by the analyst, who has the power to basically freeze time in the Matrix.
Right, and basically Neo's, maybe there's a fight or something. Like, he's doing fine, he's doing his Matrix stuff, and then the analyst comes in and basically just stops time almost completely.
Yeah, and he has this bot, like, basically take a shot at Trinity, and like the bullet's moving slowly, and like Keanu's like trying to get to it, but you know, he's in like slow motion. And the analyst, this is basically where the analyst is kind of taunting him, and he tells us that story we already told you, where, like, you know, he designed the Matrix, this newer Matrix, around feelings, and that the whole thing about, you know, keeping Trinity and Neo at arm's length and like their emotions power.
Right. You get a bunch of exposition trying to explain all these things.
That doesn't really make any fucking sense.
Right.
Oh, God. And now I'm remembering, fuck. We left out that whole scene. God, I don't remember how this all fits together. But at one point, him and Bugs, maybe it happened right before this scene. They go into the Matrix, and Smith confronts them, and all those other fighter guys with the French guy.
Oh, yeah.
The Merovingian.
Which,
this whole scene I didn't fucking stand.
It was basically another fight. The Merovingian's in rags and screaming just a bunch of crazy shit at him.
But here's the thing. So Smith shows up, and I don't remember their exact conversation, but at first I'm like thinking he's like proposing some sort of like team up between them, but then he like instantly turns on him.
Well, I mean, they kind of team up for a minute until like everybody else's ass is kicked, right?
No, not really, because basically Neo and Smith pair off and fight while Bugs and all the others fight.
Okay.
Because remember, they drop down into like what basically looks like the subway fight from the first one.
Well, don't they? Yeah, they do go into that. At some point, I thought they got separated and Smith was kicking everybody's ass. Because he does say, yeah, something about her temporary alliance or something. Gosh, I don't remember.
The whole Smith character just puzzled me. I didn't understand why they would have let him back in the Matrix. I didn't understand his motivation within the Matrix. It just, none of it made sense to me. Like, whose side is he on? What's he trying to accomplish?
Oh, no, that comes... Okay, the part I'm talking about comes later, I think, at the bar scene.
So anyway,
because Trump has to fight the analyst, or Smith has to fight the analyst.
There is
that's where the
there is that part, but yeah, this scene basically perplexed me. So basically, yeah, Neo starts fighting with Smith. They go down into like this basement that's reminiscent of the subway scene in the first one, and even like again, the action's not great, and it looks. The copy moves out of the original.
Right. It's
I didn't.
No surprises. The action wasn't as good, and it was the same.
Yeah, and then even the action with like Bugs and the other people didn't look very good.
Yeah, it wasn't crisp. Yeah.
And I didn't have subtitles on, so I really didn't understand what the fuck the Merovingian was saying. Except now he's like looks like a homeless man instead of like a posh.
Basically, he
Frenchman.
was just pissed that he wasn't rich and have fashion and a nice life anymore.
Yeah, something along those lines. It was, I don't know, it was puzzling. Okay. So now that we got all that out of the way, let's go back to where we were. So end of the movie, they're in the coffee shop. And again, Trinity comes back and wants out or whatever.
Yeah.
But instantly everybody gets into the fight because the analyst wasn't going for that. And everybody's in this big fight, but then he uses his Matrix slowdown powers again.
Right. So basically everything stops.
But then, out of nowhere, Smith, and for some reason, Smith is immune to this power.
Well, right, either immune or like he can do the same thing, which he never did at any other time. But yeah, he just walks in like it's no thing, and like
And if he could do it at another time, he could have totally kicked Neo's ass before.
right.
So I don't think he
destroy
has
him.
that power. But
He's just not affected.
I guess, but do they explain that? And again, what's his motivation here?
I mean, I guess he wants to.
It doesn't seem like he's aligned with Neo or the analyst.
Right, he might just be in it for himself. He always was like a selfish character, I guess.
So that's the only thing I can surmise is that he's trying to take over the Matrix himself again.
It could be. I guess that's his purpose. But yeah, you never really. It never feels great.
They never. I mean, again, maybe if I watch this movie again with subtitles on, maybe it'll make more sense to me. And again, it sounds like we're just hating on this movie. Like, some of it did intrigue me.
Right. We thought it was okay. I mean, it's still got a lot going on. It's just
Also,
there's so many things that are confusing and just they don't feel like clean, I guess.
also, I should mention in the conversation before, where like not in the coffee shop scene, but in the motorcycle shop scene where he had time slowed down and he was, ranting about everything. He explains that after Neo and Trinity died in the third Matrix movie, he and the machines put them back together, basically.
Right. They were revived and fixed up.
And I think he even mentions like this takes a big toll on the machines to do this.
Right. And however you wanted to say it, there was some like a large cost.
Right. I have mixed feelings about this because like I said, I actually like the original Matrix trilogy, and this kind of minimizes their sacrifice in that third movie with them just, being brought back to life.
Right.
And I would maybe be okay with it if they made more Matrix movies that were good and actually justified them doing that.
Well, yeah, if anything's good, you're going to be
But if this
forgiven.
ends up being the last Matrix movie, it really does kind of cut the nuts off the third movie, which I don't like.
Yeah. I mean, you can always just be like, pretend they don't exist.
Or you could
Like the Star Wars prequels.
yeah, or you could kind of argue that they brought him back, but maybe slightly different versions of him. Who knows? They could have just cloned him. They could have just said they cloned him.
Right. Well, he didn't. I mean, I wouldn't think he would have sustained too much damage in his little brain fight at the end of the third one. Like his whole body and his whole brain and his whole, neural network is still there.
And I guess it depends how soon they got to Trinity. I mean, she was like gutted through the middle with
Right.
it.
She had like rebar through
Yeah.
her and like she was all fucked up. Like that was a patch job.
So
You just give him oxygen and like a few pumps.
So yeah, I don't know if I really liked them doing it, but I don't know. Like you said, I can just ignore this movie if they never make other ones.
Right.
Okay, so yeah, for some reason Smith isn't susceptible to those effects, so he starts fighting with the analyst, and time goes back to normal. This I thought was weird. So Smith he has some sort of gun that he shoots the analyst with and just basically makes him like disappear.
Right, yeah, it blows like huge chunks out of him.
But obviously it doesn't kill him because he just comes back later at the end of the movie.
Yeah.
So it's like, where did he find that gun? Where did you get those guns? It just, when you introduce something like that, it's like, it just brings up more questions.
So in this confusion, like Neo and Trinity are fighting to get back together, and there's like all these people in between them.
Yeah. So basically, all the Matrix goons and all of the people they brought them are in this big brouhaha. Eventually, they end up going outside and running away because, like, there's all these other people on the streets that are swarming them.
Right. This must have been like right when the time went back to normal. they use their powers and they get out.
They get out of there,
And they jump on a motorbike.
Yeah. Oh, and we didn't mention, like, earlier, Trinity mentioned that she had, like, some dream where she saw them on the motorcycle and, like, things went poorly.
Right. Basically, everything played out, and it ended badly or something.
Right. So yeah, there's this action scene where they're being chased.
Well, kind of before it gets to that, like, he's still been stopping bullets and shit with his shield or whatnot.
Right.
And so they get outside and they're like, "Oh, can you fly us out of here?" And he kind of does this little like Mario jump in the air, comes back down. He's like, "I guess I can't fly."
Yeah, he's like, that's not going to work or something.
That's when they get on the bike.
Which, I mean,
yeah, that also doesn't make sense.
because like his mind is free again. You would think that would, if the kung fu came back to him, you would think that would come back to him.
But and they use this again later, but apparently he doesn't have this power anymore.
But basically, talking about how you never feel like he's in danger. Basically, from this point on, anytime he's in danger, he's just going to use that force field power, and the sound is a pound.
Yeah, basically through the whole thing, he's using the shield on cars, he's using it on people, he's using it for bullets and missiles, and basically that's his gimmick. Like, he uses the shield for everything.
Yeah, you see him like pushing, the swarm people away. I think he uses it at one point to like crush the top of a car so they can use it as a ramp.
Yeah.
No groundbreaking action here. Some of the other people like are in like a Jeep or something, and they're like using guns, and they're eventually get swarmed. But then like Bugs and Morpheus and a few others are able to. They finish their mission in the real world, so now they're in, and they basically just kill all the people swarming them and like instantly save them as well.
Right, like they're they fly away on the bike and they're getting attacked by helicopters and cars and all this shit, and the swarms get turned on or whatever. Yeah. And this is kind of funny.
Yeah,
but like,
this part made me laugh.
You'd almost say like the other group, like the Bugs and the Morpheus and all those like sub agents, like none of those guys were going to survive the bots. Like, I can't see them surviving that onslaught. But, like, Matrix and Trinity, they're flying down the road. And, like, there's all these bots in these skyscrapers and stuff. And they're jumping through the windows and coming down at them. And, like, I guess he's shielding some of them or whatever.
Yeah, there's, like, we're making human bombs out of them.
Right. But, like, most of them are just, like, splatting, like, raindrops on the pavement. And you're like, God, well, that's, I guess it would be... Should have been a better aim, I guess.
Well, and the one thing is, like, so, like, the chances of those people, like, actually just, like, hitting them are nil. But, like...
There's so many you think maybe someone would.
But you would think, like, if enough of them are splatting in front, they'd at least, like, create, like, bumps or smears. It'd be funny if they just, like, slipped in all the blood and guts.
But, yeah, it was so... I don't know. We were both laughing because it was just stupid.
It was just so ridiculous. You can't help but laugh because, that part, it was just
I don't even remember how that sequence ends. But, basically they get, all the bots kind of herd them into this alley or basically a side street or something.
Well, I think eventually they do, like, wreck the bike or something.
Right, that's part of it.
And they end up having to escape in this elevator up to the top of a building.
Well, right, they get in this side road. Basically, they got helicopters on both sides and all this bullshit. And, like, they lose the bike and then they go in. And there aren't any bots here conveniently to fight, so they just wait for the elevator. They go up to the top, and then... did they fight a helicopter again up there?
Yeah. The helicopters come, and one of them launches a missile. He just uses his force field power, blows up the other one, and I think maybe they do something to take that one down, and then they have a moment together, and then eventually another one comes that forces them to jump off the building, holding hands.
Which I don't know why that would be exactly, but yeah, they get to a point where they decide they're gonna both jump off the building.
That's true. Why did they jump? Because his force field powers would have still worked.
Right.
Like, they weren't really in danger, but maybe they're just like, time to test if we can fly.
I guess, I mean, they're like, well, we can defeat these guys all day long. What else are we going to do? I don't know. But, so they jump off, and they're doing the whole leap of faith thing.
Right.
And so they're falling, and then finally they stop falling. And basically it's Trinity is holding him up.
Yeah, so she's flying.
She's flying, and he's not. And there was some other like speech somewhere along the line where about him not being the one, and like he never believed it, and she believed it, and then so when she catches him and she's holding there midair, they're kind of playing like the little hero music, like maybe she's the one.
Yeah,
like
I don't.
That's how I read that.
I didn't know exactly how they were going for that because basically in.
But other than like at the very end, she really didn't play much in the movie. Like she didn't have like a huge part.
Not a huge part. But my thing is like, in like the original trilogy, like the people who are free from the Matrix, their mind was free. They could all manipulate the Matrix to a certain extent, but I always took it as that like Neo was the one because for whatever reason. It was almost like, in Star Wars, like there's these people that are force sensitive, but for whatever reason, there's some that are more than others.
Right, like his neural.
Yeah, for whatever reason, his neural pathways like really allowed him to
off the charts.
Yeah, he had the most midichlorians.
Yeah.
And so that's what I thought made him the one. And obviously, Trinity could manipulate the Matrix to a certain extent, but like not like he could.
Right.
So, like, I don't really understand this whole, like, flip-flopping of, oh, maybe she's the one, he's not. I don't really...
I think it was probably more political, I don't know.
I mean, she was a badass character in the original, so she didn't need to be able to fly to be a badass. But, I mean, I'm okay with it if they're just like, oh, like maybe, other people are as strong as him, and they just, just unlock that. But yeah, she can fly and he can. I don't know. Eventually, he can again at the very end of the movie.
I think basically he couldn't fly, so they could have that scene.
I guess so. Yeah, the power of love compels them.
Right. Yeah.
Now I remember, the very end of the movie, but before they was there anything before they go to the analyst again?
I mean, there was that, like we talked about briefly, somehow there was that bullshit scene where they actually extracted Trinity and took her out.
Oh, yeah.
I don't know if we really need to hit on that.
They get her in the real world. Yeah, I mean, at the coffee shop, that's where they did the whole, like, bugs thing taking over her body for a quick, hot second. But again, like, I can't explain it. I don't know why they had to do that.
Was there something that happened to Smith after he blew away the analyst?
That's a good question. I don't think they ever go back to Smith. I don't think they ever...
Yeah, I don't remember them going back.
It's a dangling thread they'll probably never get to. I mean, I'm sure there was probably some scene with bugs in them. I just don't remember. But yeah, basically, end of the movie, they go back into the Matrix. They confront the analyst, and like, Trinity beats the shit out of him, basically, like, for manipulating her with the kids and everything.
Right.
And she like fucks up his jaw once, and she does other things to him, like, just physically assaults him. What else? Like, eventually they both fly off, but was there anything more significant in that scene with him?
I mean, there was definitely some kind of negotiation where they were negotiating. They offered him like either do this or this, and basically, I don't remember the wording or even the details, but like basically they showed that they had the upper hand and that they were going to take it, and this guy was just going to have to fucking deal with it.
Yeah, I mean, it ended very similar to the first movie. He's on the payphone or whatever, basically, putting them on notice or whatever,
right.
And then he flies off. This was a kind of a similar thing where they basically put him on notice, and then they both fly off, and then they cut to a cover of the same song that's not as good, which is fitting. Um, again, so yeah, overall, like I know it sounds like we were pretty harsh on this movie, and as you can tell, like there's definitely some things in the movie that didn't make sense. The action was not great. Um, I mean, I'll be honest. The part of the movie I liked the best was the stuff in the real world where they were talking about kind of the peace and the some of the machines breaking off and all that stuff. But I just kind of wish they would have got into more detail to find out how we got to where we are.
Yeah, and you see this a lot in trilogies and in certain genres and stuff where a huge number of the plot points just get recycled and you get that kind of nostalgia for it. But I always kind of feel like I wish they'd just given me a different story.
I agree. I agree. Do you have anything else to add before we score this movie?
Not really. I mean, I'm kind of like you. I feel like we have just been shitting on it for like the whole time. But when it ended, we were both like, it was okay.
Yeah. Yeah. Again, like I feel like I'm still kind of processing it a little bit.
Right.
But
And I think like talking it out, like we realized more of the problems.
yeah.
Like it was just kind of unsettling. Like I knew it wasn't great. And like at the same time, it's hard to put your finger on what was wrong exactly.
Yeah. Like it's definitely the least good Matrix movie. Like the trilogy is much much better than this movie. But at the same time, like there are interesting ideas in this movie. And if this movie wasn't doing so poorly at the box office and they had a chance to continue, I think they could actually, with more time, make something out of what they laid down here. I just don't think it'll ever happen.
Yeah, I really don't know.
And like you said, maybe it would be better to tell a totally different story within the universe anyways.
I mean, I think to some extent we've seen that with like Star Wars, and sometimes the side stories are amazing,
Yeah.
and sometimes it's better to just say we have this intellectual space. Let's go do something else here,
Yeah.
and that's the direction I'd go with it.
All right. Well, score time. What would you give this thing? Scale of 1 to 10.
I mean, I'm middle of the road. I'm like a 5 or a 6.
Yeah, I'm going to be nice and give it a 6.5. But yeah, it is definitely middle of the road. I mean, I think it is worth seeing, especially if you're a fan of the original Matrix movies. I mean, apparently a lot of people are really hating it. I think even if you end up not liking it, you'll find some things that intrigue you.
Yeah, like you said, it's not all bad. There's some good ideas in there. It's just it didn't all come together.